Crescent Moon is an RPG by Ema Acosta published in 2021 as part of a Zine Quest month promoted by Kickstarter that year. It describes itself as feelings-delving role-playing and is created on the Forged in the Dark design framework. If you're not familiar, Forged in the Dark is the name of a third-party license for games based on the framework of the game Blades in the Dark by John Harper. I've covered a few Forged in the Dark games on this channel, including the original Blades in the Dark itself. There's a whole playlist if you want to track those down. I would consider Forged in the Dark games to be a bit on the technical side of things, just on average. But when it comes to Crescent Moon, this is about the lightest Forged in the Dark game I've come across in terms of mechanics and fiddly bits. So the game has you playing as a brave child exploring a dreamscape called the Daydream. The players are children, and this includes people aged 10 to 19, generally speaking. And the game master is called the Moon. As the kid characters wander through the Daydream, they encounter wisps, which are any kind of inhabitant in the world. I was most reminded of the kind of inhabitants from Alice in Wonderland here, just dreamlike talking animals and apparitions. There are some player principles listed here, like portray a vibrant, whimsical world and color the world with hope. But there are some important inward-facing principles as well. Voice your kids' shadows and worries and express the power emotions hold. You're meant to play as a troop of brave children, but ones who also possess extreme emotional openness and vulnerability. There are 3 ways to approach obstacles with the dice, and those manifest as your 3 core attributes: fortitude, insight, and spirit. These will add 1 or 2 points from your roll when they apply to a situation. There are 4 types of rolls in the game, and they all follow the same basic format of you throw a dice pool and take the single highest result. If that result is 6 or more, it's a full hit. 4 or 5 is a hit, which is success with a consequence, and 3 or less is a miss. Each pair of ones you roll counts as a critical success. If you have 0 or fewer dice in a roll, you just roll 2 dice of the same type and take the lower number. One of the little threads that connects this game to the Forged in the Dark framework is how difficulty is assessed and put into one of 3 tiers before each roll. In this game, it's called setting the ground. For a challenge roll, maybe one of the most common types of rolls, your die type can be either a D4, a D6, or D8, depending on the ground set for the challenge at hand. You can also get bonuses from drawing on a memory or through a friendship move. There are 4 levels of ground: high ground, where you're given a D8 for a challenge; even ground, where D6s are used; low ground, where you get to use D4s; and no ground, where no roll could succeed and the players have to come up with a workaround or whittle down a timer to prepare a proper challenge. This step dice approach is definitely a neat take on the risk mechanic in Blades in the Dark. It's intuitive and breaks up the monotony of D6s that you'd normally find with this game paradigm. Crescents are a familiar mechanic that you might recognize as clocks. You can divide these into 1, 3, 4, or 5 segments and count things down like progress towards a goal, health of an NPC, or countdown to a threat or event. The character creation section is short, clear, and very straightforward. The most notable aspects for creating your kid are your spark, a remarkable feat that you're capable of, your equipment, and your shadow, the source of an internal struggle that you can carry inside of you. The shadow table on the bottom right here can help generate one for you. I thought one of the most interesting things about this game was its inventory system. On your character sheet, you have 10 squares, 2 for your hands, 2 for your body, 4 for your pack, and 2 for equipped sparks, which are like spell stones that you can use and recharge. But these inventory boxes can also be taken up by conditions, which are negative effects that hinder you narratively and mechanically. Items can have up to 3 uses, and you can track those on the card itself. And some cards can be 2 or more spaces and may require multiple kids to carry around. The implementation of the cards with the usage bubbles to fill in is really a stroke of brilliance. Its functionality is completely in line with the game aiming to be, quote, all ages. But this kind of tactile, highly visual inventory system isn't just for younger players. It's nice to be able to organize one's inventory with cards and not have to write anything down. Those spell stones that I mentioned a minute ago are called star shards, or just shards. They have 3 levels of power, and you can choose that level depending on how many uses it has left. So for example, if your kid wants to cast Featherlight, they would grip the stone tight, describe how the magic flows into the world, then decide on a power level of 1, 2, or 3. That is, You decide on 1d6, 2d6, or 3d6 on a roll. For every 3 to 5 result, you mark a usage on the shard. Usage bubbles are how you actually determine how high your power level can be on the next cast. So if you've already marked 2 usage from a previous cast, your next cast can only be a power level of 1 or 1d6. This is pretty much it for casting, which is refreshingly simple. You can recharge a shard, but each shard is different. Sometimes it's easy, but it might also require something elaborate with a countdown moon and everything. There's a table in the book that lists 12 shards, and that's what you get digitally on cards to print out. But each of these card types also comes with blanks, so you can make up your own shards, for example, and write them down. The heart track is quite interesting. You start with 5 hearts, and misses on certain moves in the game will tell you to mark a heart, like losing one. You can also voluntarily mark 2 hearts and spend a memory to get +1 die on a roll, but once you've marked all your hearts, the Unveil Your Shadow move is triggered on your next challenge roll, and that gives you a dice for every heart you've healed. Okay, so I forgot to mention there are 3 unhealed hearts when you start a character. You actually can only heal them after unveiling your shadow. In other words, unveiling your shadow actually heals a heart. Once you've healed all 3 of these hearts, you get one last refresh on your heart track. And when you've marked all those down, instead of unveiling your shadow a 4th time, you actually retire the character. In the fiction, this is your character making peace with their inner self, and the daydream losing its grip on them as they slide back into the human world. You can decide exactly where and how you vanish. Memories in the game are recollections of other humans and creatures who have already come and gone, and they're considered the sort of ethereal building blocks of the daydream itself. Your kid can capture a memory in a number of ways, and the player will write it down on a blank index card when this happens. Memories are spent like a point pool, buying +1 dice, strengthening a friendship, creating a new spark or personal feat, or upgrading a piece of equipment. I think it would be hard after a while to just not treat these as poker chips to be thrown around. But you could still probably inject a lot of humor or drama into these cards because they can be pretty much anything you can think of. Gratitude is a shared pool that the group can fill by doing nice things for a wisp, those denizens of the daydream. Then individual players can spend them to get a favorable result from an encounter with that same wisp. Friendship is tracked between every 2 kids, and they are graded as distant, friendly, and close. You move up and down this track based on the narrative progression of the friendship in the fiction. These 3 grades of friendship afford you 3 different dice that will affect your likelihood of success with the 4 friendship moves: lend a hand, guide, protect, and ready a maneuver. The game essentially offers 4 tones of play called links. Each link defines how the player kids are associated with each other. The family is sort of like a G-rated movie for all ages. The Stranded has the tags adventure fantasy, cartoony action, feel good, heroic. And I think those 2 links, family and Stranded, are where all the artwork of this game lands, on the shonen side of things. Then there is The Dreamers with the tags urban fantasy, psychological thriller, mystery, and weird fiction. And finally, The Exiles with the tags high fantasy, graphic violence, dark fairy tale, real world issues. I really like the inclusion of these last 2 links for this game, but I do feel that most of the game, including the shards and the artwork, really don't embrace or support these modes like they do the first 2. But you do get a very clear guide on how to build your world for each of these links, as they each come with 5 pages of support handouts. To build your world, you first just run down this list of questions, and players can decide on various aspects of their character with these tables. And the GM or Moon has a whole control sheet panel for the party, which differs from link to link. When running a game, you track the progress towards a main goal with a 5-segment moon, but moons tracking secondary objectives may need to be filled before filling a main moon segment. There are 2 phases to this game, and that's the adventuring phase, where challenge and magic rolls take place, and then there's the connection phase, which in the fiction takes place between adventures. You can think of it as downtime, and it comes with a whole host of moves. 2 for starting and finishing a connection phase, and 8 that take place during the phase itself. These moves really illustrate what the game is trying to get people to do, which is play as a kid who harbors intense introspection as well as their own hopes and memories. I thought a really metaphysical one here was weave memories, where you infuse up to 5 memories in order to create or craft various kinds of items. This is where those memory cards could just end up as poker chips. The chapter on moon advice is dense and very tightly crafted. As the moon, you have the responsibility of coordinating a story in a temporary, emotion-filled, dreamlike existence. But since conflict is interesting, you have at your disposal so-called spins. Spins are a point pool used to introduce consequences into the scene without needing a player to miss a roll. The moon can use these spins to do certain things in both the adventure and the connection phases to stir the pot a bit. As far as your moves as the moon, there are either hard or soft consequences in this game called near side or far side moves. And there's a list of 15 conditions across 3 levels of severity that you can dole out depending on the context. Each of these conditions actually has a mechanical effect to it that really does force down a kid's chance of success in one way or another, so it becomes imperative to recover from these conditions sooner rather than later. There's actually a detailed set of 7 special moves called eclipses that are only played during the connection phase. These are meant to either challenge a kid with an internal or external confrontation or a maze, or to level up the party. I found each of the wisps to be really nicely defined. Rather than writing out in paragraph form how each of these NPCs behaves and what they can do, they are defined with short phrases and with a numbered list of powers and behavioral tendencies. This is a model way to present NPCs, in my opinion. Of course, this game has the advantage of not needing stat blocks of any sort. The game zooms out a bit and offers up sample groups of NPCs called parties. Parties run the gamut from gangs of frogs to rabbits to foxes, as well as circus performers and owl witches. They are categorized as either weak, strong, or mighty, and a group of kids can lower their strength rating by successfully sidestepping them somehow in the fiction. The book offers a quick list of how to create a region or a specific area in the world where an adventure might take place. Also included in the handouts for the game is a region worksheet where you can list all the pertinent information, including wisps and parties who can be found here. Mazes are one of those things that you as the moon can throw at players during a connection phase. They appear in any shape and size and anywhere, and by default include an overarching theme, like a mountain or an arena or inside of a beast, as well as a controlling force, a keeper who is the source of the magic of the maze, and a spell effect that makes the maze extra weird in one way or another. It's written that the kids should never try to take on the keeper directly, but rather outsmart the maze's logic or the keeper themselves through indirect means. If you think about it, a maze might be where a lot of the game's session's time is devoted, at least in the adventure phase. You can kind of tell that a lot of the action takes place in a maze just by looking at the example maze included in the book. The last 5 pages of content in this 64-page game are devoted to some helpful tables for generating adventure details and items. Alright, here are my thoughts on Crescent Moon. Artwork chooses a tone. I do appreciate how the game offers 4 different tones of play, ranging from Studio Ghibli to Lovecraftian horror, but the items and more immediately the artwork really heavily suggest Ghibli. But like I've said, the underlying engine of this game is compelling enough to try and hack this into a game that seriously embraces a darker theme. Inventory. I really love how inventory works in this game and how conditions can crowd your space. I didn't mention before that you can store extra inventory with a friendly wisp who you trust or in a safe place that you might find, so you can accumulate a bunch of stuff, but you can only carry so much with you, and it's instantly recognizable if you're over encumbered. The moves. When it comes right down to it, when you read a Forged in the Dark or Powered by the Apocalypse game for that matter, the heart of the game is the moves, and that's where you need to look closest. The moves in Crescent Moon do what you would hope them to do, which is reinforce the main theme of the game in various ways. And that main theme is introspection and personal growth. Feelings delving, as the subtitle of the game puts it, typeset. I can't really go into the depth on the topic because of my lack of expertise, but I found that the font and the colors in the interior pages of this game were inviting and relaxing. In combination with the gentle artwork, it's a pure pleasure to read these pages. As I mentioned at the top, Crescent Moon was part of a Zine Quest month and it reached its funding goal. I wouldn't say that it raised a notable amount of funds, but as soon as you crack open this book, you realize what you're holding is a game that deserved orders of magnitude more funding than what it got. It achieves that one magical thing that you sometimes see in shorter RPGs, and that's efficiency. There are no wasted paragraphs, and every section is ruthlessly edited and tightened into no more than 4 pages per topic. When you constrain a game to 32, or in this case, 64 pages, you don't always get a game with much depth, but Crescent Moon does it, and it does so with a consistent, solidly established style. One little workaround that zine creators do to get beyond their natural page limit is handouts. For example, in this game, there are dozens of pages of extra game in the form of printable handouts. But these pages are just support for the main game, like move cheat sheets and worksheets that I've shown throughout the video. I actually found each of these support sheets to be remarkably well designed and tightly edited as well. I could have easily missed this game in the deluge of zine quest entries, as well as the general waves of indie RPGs being published on a daily basis at this point. But out of sheer luck, I caught it, and I was able to share it with you. Thanks for watching. Links are below. See ya.